Larry, good to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, Michael. Good to be here.
So, I guess timing is everything. Now, things are happening so fast by the hour these days, by the hour. And, I'm glad we're having this conversation today because it appears, and you tell me what your thoughts are, the United States is in the process of decoupling from China. Obviously, they put a 90-day pause on tariffs with the rest of the world, except for China, which they increased it yesterday. I read your Substack last night and talking about this potential, where this is going. And I ask if maybe if you wouldn't mind going a little further detail for people that haven't read it,
Yeah.
what your thoughts are.
Well, let's make it a real simple question. Uh, does China need our products more than we need China's products? That's the central question. And the answer to that is we need China a whole hell of a lot more than China needs us. And it's not so much that the U.S. is decoupling. The U.S. is trying to provoke a confrontation with China. Now, I don't want to pretend that China's some innocent party here in the sense, you know, I've dealt with them over the years in investigations that me and my partner have done. That China was a major player in the purchase of straw buying of luxury cars in the United States. What they do is they'd hire students or retired people to go into like a BMW dealership or a Mercedes dealership and buy a luxury car. The Chinese would give them a cashier's check, and then when they'd come out, the student or retired person would get $1,000. Chinese would load it up into a container and ship it off to Beijing. The brother of the trade minister was the one running this car lot. And I know in the case of BMW, it cost him like, the first year we started working on it was like $740 million. So it was a significant, so they do things like that. They've smuggled, they were sanctioned on aluminum, and the aluminum manufacturer cut a deal with the drug cartel in Mexico, the Knights Templar, and was putting the aluminum was going into Mexico. Then it would get stamped as made in Mexico and shipped into the United States. So, okay, I'm acknowledging all that goes on, and the production of fentanyl. You've got Japanese entrepreneurs, let's call them, that are producing this lethal drug that's killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. But you got to come back and say, what is it that we're trying? Are we trying to change China's behavior so we have a more productive relationship? Or are we trying to go to war with it and try to change a society? And I think it's the latter, what we're doing, and it's absolutely stupid. Jacking up the tariffs on the electronic goods and the pharmaceuticals in particular. There are four major categories. You got electronics like iPhones, computers, MacBook Pros. You've got furniture, you've got toys, and you got pharmaceuticals. Okay, so we can always find alternative sources for toys and for furniture. But the electronic items, and more importantly, the pharmaceutical items, we're talking prescription drugs, let's say like a Torvastat. That's made in China, not here. Now, yeah, I agree that we shouldn't have critical pharmaceutical items produced in some other country that we're hostile with, and we should have it at home. But that's not going to happen overnight. So what will happen with these products is that the price is going to go skyrocket in the United States. Now, it's interesting the economic ignorance that's evident in the public, because the media is going, yeah, man, China's currency has declined in value, man. We're kicking their ass. Well, if China's currency is now cheaper, they're not going to be able to buy as much from us, number one. But that means that their goods are going to be relatively cheaper, more inexpensive so other countries can buy it. So if the yuan is going down, it's going to actually make it easier for them to sell items to Russia, to India, to Brazil, to Argentina, to Indonesia, around the world. So this kind of blind confrontation by Trump, I think, is just stupid. On top of it, you've got some rare earth minerals like antimony, gallium, germanium, that are critical components, essential. They're essential elements in the creation of a lot of military technology and military weapons. Antimony in particular is actually a key component in producing the explosives on some of the warheads. We don't have an alternative to those. It's not like they're sitting out here in our backyard and say, "Oh, we'll just go dig it up and process it." So this is this is really, I think, a foolish approach by Trump and his team, and got Trump really. I couldn't believe he did this the other night, where he said, "Yeah, and all these countries, man, they're lining up to kiss my ass." You know what? Even if that's what's going on, and you think that's what's going on, you don't say that in public, because now you've outwardly humiliated these people. China is not going to surrender to us on this at all. I maintain that what this is going to do is expand China's motivation to create an alternative financial system. So let's look. One of the major exports of the United States to China has been soybeans. Well, soybean farmers, you are screwed, because you know what? We're not the only people that produce soybeans in the world. There's this country south of the equator called Brazil. And in fact, Brazil and China already have signed a trade relationship where they're going to use their respective currencies. They don't have to trade in dollars. So again, this using the tariff as a sledgehammer in the way that Trump is doing it I think it's going to backfire, and it's going to accelerate the development of BRICS as an alternative financial system to the United States. It's going to make sure that, the Chinese are going to go out of their way to stick it up our ass, not kiss our ass.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, with Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time, extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time. A couple of things I want to ask you. I was having a conversation about this, and people push back that, oh, they're the enemy, China's the enemy, China's the enemy. And I'm with you. They're not saints in all this. No, nobody is. But I look at, stealing the intellectual property, the fentanyl. We allowed these things to happen. We allowed them to come in and acquire this property. What about the universities with the Chinese students, allowing them to come in to, access all this information? The fentanyl, I mean, look at the last 4 years. I mean, I know it's been going on prior to that, but this administration, last administration, both the Republicans and the Democrats, they did nothing to stop the fentanyl coming in my view, or very minimal.
Well, let's look at one of the major needs, and let's call it the future of industry, is in the production and manufacture of chips, computer chips. You need a sizable number of STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. China leads the world right now in STEM graduates. Russia, I believe, is like second or third. The United States, uh, our numbers are inflated because we count a lot of foreign students as our graduates. They graduate from our universities, that's true, but a lot of them are Chinese. So the number of STEM graduates in the United States is declining rapidly. And, we're not in a position to actually be able to manufacture, have enough qualified people that can work in the creation and production of these computer chips, as an example, just one thing. So, the United States is lagging way, way behind. And, we're the we're racist. I don't toss that term around lightly, but when dealing with the Chinese, we're racist. We don't view them as good as us. They're not as smart as us. And, we've manufactured, as you said, they're our enemy, but they're not the ones that have been attacking and killing people around the world for the last 30, 40, well, actually 60 years. That's us, the United States. If you take our body count, whether you're talking Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, Libya, I mean, the Balkans. I mean, we got so much blood on our hands. We could be in a Freddy movie, a Halloween or something. It's just the gore we have caused. That's not China. Yeah, and the entire look, we refuse to come to grips with what we have done. The entire growth of China's economy, yeah, they copy things, they steal things. We'd do the same thing. Okay, so we need to get off our moral horse and pretend, oh, we're 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 sanctified. We're without sin on this.
We're the good guys, Larry. We're the good
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah. We got the white hats. They got the black hats. Um, the entire reason that Richard Nixon and Kissinger did the opening to China in 1972 was so we could use China against Russia. Now, I can't tell you that I keep hearing from a variety of Americans who should know better that Russia. There's no way Russia wants to have that relationship with China. That they're going to be in a long term. We got China. That's impossible. We're going to split Russia off from China. Russia will want to be our friend, not China's. They don't understand. China and Russia, yeah, they've gotten married. Let's put it that way. They're not dating. They're not having a one night stand. They've gotten married now. They recognize they've got to have this partnership. Is it an arranged marriage? Yeah, a little bit. But they understand the one country that represents the greatest threat to either of them is the United States. Who's funding attacks that are being carried out inside Russia? The United States.
I'm glad you went there because I was listening to my friend Matt Smith and Doug Casey yesterday on their podcast talking about the refineries, the Russian refineries right now, or not right now, but over the course of time that the Ukrainian drones have been focusing on. And China's, one of their biggest vulnerabilities, if not the biggest, is the fact that they import all their oil.
Yeah.
Is that playing a part in cutting off or cutting down the supply of oil to China from Russia? And is that factoring in those attacks?
Yeah. Those attacks are pinpricks. They're not causing any significant damage at all. And most of what gets counted as attacks are drones that get shot down coming in on the facilities. So it's not disrupted Russia's ability to supply China with oil. The other supplier is Iran. So this is why earlier this week, China and Russia met with the Iranian officials on the eve of the talks that are going to take place between the the United States and Iran on Saturday. And, basically, um, they're charting out a variety of options. I think both Russia and China would prefer to have a negotiated settlement with the United States when it comes to Iran. But if the United States and Israel decide to attack Iran, China and Russia will be involved, and they will really escalate the risk of a third world war. Russia and China, they've carried out military exercises with Iran since 2019. Well, 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. They just did it in March. 7 years of joint military naval exercises for keeping the Persian Gulf open. So, they're not playing. This is the diplomatic relationships. I asked this specifically of Sergei Lavrov when I was in Moscow early in March. They harbor no illusions about U.S. intentions, and they see China as an essential partner. And they're not just their economic development, their political, their military sphere, national security, across the board. China and Russia, they're going to be, they'll wind up, I think, as the leaders of the 21st century. The United States will become sort of like Great Britain is now, a noisy, bothersome irrelevancy.
Is this potential war with Iran and cutting off that oil, is that factoring in the United States as well in terms of damaging China? Are they thinking that way?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not even sure they're critically thinking that far out. Anyone that believes that Donald Trump is a critical thinker, that capable of playing 3D chess, he is not. He tends to react more emotionally, and he's not even logical. Notice he says what we're doing to China is from the Chinese standpoint, they view it as an act of war. It's an attack on China. And yet Trump turns around and says, oh, but man, Xi and I, we're great friends. We're buddies. Yeah, man, he likes me. I like him. Boy, we get along. Then it's like, what the hell are you doing? Then sit down and talk to the man. Sit down and talk. If he's really your friend, I mean, think about your personal relationship. If you've got a friend who's doing something you don't like and they're hurting you, you say, hey, what's going on? But if you refuse to communicate and you take actions against them, that doesn't promote harmony and resolving the conflict. It exacerbates the conflict. So this is Iran is a proxy. I think Iran's a proxy that the United States wants to get rid of in order to hurt both Russia and China.
Also, with this, I mean, how much of the Middle East oil and Iran, specifically with Iran, how much do they supply to our other allies in Asia, Japan, Korea?
Well, there are sanctions on it, but I don't know the precise numbers, so I'm not going to sit there and try to dance around that. But it is a critical supply for China out of Iran.
Push comes to, so how do you think this call will go on Saturday, based on the information you have as we sit here today, Thursday, 2 days before?
If Trump meant what he said yesterday, where he says the only thing he wants is to make sure that Iran stops working on its nuclear weapon. Well, number one, Iran's not working on a nuclear weapon. Iran has swore off doing so for 22 years ago in 2003. The fatwa issued by the Ayatollah Khamenei declared that it was a sin to work on such a weapon. Then on top of it, on January 17th, Iran signed a mutual security agreement, comprehensive strategic security agreement with Russia, which the Russian legislature ratified on Tuesday or Monday of this week. And in it, they commit to work together on non-proliferation. What that means is that Russia is acknowledging that Iran's not working on a nuclear device, because if they were, Russia wouldn't be committing to a non-proliferation with Iran. So if Trump is sincere about that, well, he's already got the deal. Can come out and say, "See, we got this deal in place," and basically what he's going to do is agree to the JCPOA. But if Trump insists on, well, no, wait a second, we're gonna insist that Iran's got to, demilitarize. He's got to get rid of all these missiles that it has and space. Its attempts to have a space program. It's got to cut off all assistance to Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Then Iran's going to tell us, basically, go fuck yourselves. It'll be that crude. If the United States is wanting assurances that Iran is not building a nuke, though they can get that, the United States continues to push this lie that Iran's the #1 sponsor of terrorism. No, it is not. The facts, objective facts, do not support that. In fact, the terrorist groups that have been attacking us are Sunni groups, many of which Iran has been fighting. In Syria, Iran was fighting ISIS. We supposedly were fighting ISIS, but we're now finding out that, my old outfit, the CIA, had some contacts with and providing some funding and training to members of Al-Qaeda, ISIS. This Jelani character that's now running Syria, he's a genuine head chopper. So, the fact of the matter is, over the last 25 years, the first quarter of this century where we've been consumed with terrorism, the terrorist attacks have been carried out by these Sunni groups that are funded, supported by the Gulf Arabs like Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia is our buddy. I mean, see, this is how crazy the world is. It's not based upon any kind of objective fact. We get fed a line of propaganda in this country, and people go along with it like a bunch of bobbleheads.
Well, and so based on what we talked about already, they're not strategically targeting oil yet to cut off China or to hurt them.
Right.
Now,
trying to.
So they're trying to. Are you seeing any parallels with what the United States did with Japan in 1938 with the oil? And we know where that eventually led to, both at Pearl Harbor and World War II.
Well, I don't think it's a fair comparison for this reason. The Japanese were an aggressive imperial force that started attacking China in 1931. And then in 1937, you had the Nanking massacre, where the Japanese came in and murdered 300, 400,000 Chinese in the city of Nanking. There was, let's put it this way, there was reason for the United States to take aggressive moves against Japan because it was a murderous imperial power back then. That's not China. That's not China. They're economically aggressive, but they've been ripping us off for years, ripping us off. Okay, Donald Trump, then why didn't you do a damn thing about it when you were president the first time? Oh, the Chinese are controlling the Panama Canal. Okay, Donald Trump, why didn't you deal with that when you were president in 2017? Because the Chinese have been there operating those ports in Panama since 1998. It's not been a secret. It's been open. So that's why I say this is all sort of made up. Um, and it's uh, I'm I voted for Trump. I don't like what I'm seeing. He's going to get us all killed.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to 1998. It's okay. Where was Clinton? Where was George W. Bush? I
Barack
mean,
Obama. I mean, this has been. I said this has been going on. I used to uh, back in 2000, 2001, in that period. I was traveling to Panama about every 2 or 3 weeks to do conducting investigations and working on product counterfeiting projects to stop product counterfeiting. Spent a lot of time in Cologne, which is at the north end of the Panama Canal. And yeah, the Chinese were there. It wasn't a secret. Why is it that now Trump makes this an issue of national security and we're pretending, oh, the Chinese are trying to control the canal? Please. The Chinese have just had more effective diplomacy. Our approach, the American approach right now, we're a bully. And we're getting away with the smaller, weaker countries. Yeah, we can bully the hell out of them. And they'll submit, but one of these days it's going to get served up to us. And we're not going to have a group of people standing behind us and, yeah, we're with the United States. We will have alienated most of the nations in the world. I mean, Vietnam, look at them. They thought they had a good trading relationship with us, and then Trump savages them with tariffs, which will really hurt Vietnam. This instead of stepping back and said, okay, where are we being hurt with respect to the import of goods, and doing it on a case by case basis. Now we're punishing everybody, and most Americans going, yeah, right on. We're showing the world. God, it's self-destructive. It is. It is not serving our national interests.
and people are, you have the Trump derangement syndrome on the left, but then
Right.
you also have the Trump obsession syndrome. Is what I just coined that today, Larry, with you. I'm unveiling
Yeah.
my new term, but it's an obsession. And I saw it yesterday, as you saw the stock market go up almost 3,000 points. And I'm not sitting here claiming that I'm any type of economist or financial expert, but there's a bigger play here, and I base that off people like yourself that I talk to about this. That this is by no means, Trump is not the dad, and he's just going to fix everything. Hope I'm
Right.
wrong. You know what? If I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to come on here and say it, just like what I thought about the election. But you have this Trump obsession syndrome where people are just like, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And you look at maybe he does, but
No, he doesn't. And I here's how I know that. Um, I have a source who's met with Mr. Trump multiple times, and um, over the last year. And when I asked this person, does is Trump a critical thinker? I mean, does he think, does he apply critical thinking skills? And the answer was absolutely not. Trump is an insecure person. He doesn't surround himself with people that are smarter than him. He wants the bobbleheads. That's what he's got. Marco Rubio, bobblehead. Pete Hegseth, bobblehead. like a Waltz bobblehead. Nobody's going to go in and tell him that he's wrong. And if you do tell him he's wrong, you're going to get fired. So as long as you tell him he's great, you're good. Trump's obsession with it's like, I've read a lot of history. I have never encountered a movement within historians where they said, man, the greatest president in the United States history was McKinley. We need to go back and ask ourselves, what would McKinley do? And here's Trump with this obsession with McKinley, renaming Mount McKinley in Alaska, and then focusing on how McKinley used tariffs. Yeah, that was more than 120 years ago. This is the world has changed dramatically. And while I agree that the globalist mentality is a threat that we need to counter, I think the approach that Trump is taking is alienating countries that we would want to have as allies. It just, again, he came into office with such opportunity to establish a legacy as a peace president. He could have put an immediate stop to the war in Ukraine, and just say, look, this is Russia's not the enemy. We provoked this with Russia. We're gonna reconcile with Russia because Russia is a great power economically, and more importantly now militarily. We're going to put an end to the war in Gaza. We're cutting off all military support to Israel. But that's not what he's doing. Instead, they're criminalizing free speech. If you say that you support Hamas, you are immediately labeled a terrorist supporter. And if you don't happen to be an American citizen, you'd be kicked out of the country. You're accused of being an anti-Semite, while I can show you objective data from the Israeli Foreign Ministry going back 25 years. In the last 25 years, Palestinian terrorist attacks, and I'm putting it in quotations, and coupled with the number that were killed, the number of Israelis that died on October 7th, the total number dead according to those statistics, 2,755 over a 25-year period. I mean, good God, I think that many people die in Florida in 1 month from traffic accidents. And yet we're claiming that Hamas is this great terrorist organization. Meanwhile, the Zionists are starving, murdering women and children, all in the name of fighting terrorism, a terrorism that's not a grave threat to Israel. Israel's the biggest threat to itself right now. And yet Trump aligns himself with that, and there's named people like Mike Huckabee, who insists that if we don't stop Iran now, they're going to come invade us. Oh, that's a bunch of male bovine excrement. Just a lie. So we're surrounded by a bunch of propaganda right now, and yeah, and I'm not justifying the propaganda that's been directed against Trump is in part helped create this situation, the dishonesty on both sides. But I don't see. I think the risk. There's great risk of the situation with Iran spinning out of control and embroiling the United States in a war with Russia and China.
That's one of the other things that you heard about on the campaign, how quickly he could end this conflict in Russia, Ukraine. And I watch his airplane gaggles, when he flies back to DC every Sunday, and he's always asked that, and he says, "We're making progress, we're making progress, we're making progress." It sounds to me like it's at a complete standstill.
Well, that's it's um, the two deals that have been, quote, negotiated so far was one, an end to the attack on energy infrastructure in both countries. Russia has abided by that. Ukraine hasn't. Ukraine says, "Oh no, Russia's been attacking. No, Russia's been attacking military targets. They haven't let up on that, but they're not going after energy infrastructure. They're not bombing power plants and dams and transmission lines." Um, then the agreement that was reached I don't recall if it was Istanbul or in Turkey or in Riyadh, but um, that they'd reopen the restart grain sales, the movement of grain and fertilizer out of the Black Sea to Europe and to Africa. But that required the Brits, the Europeans, to lift the banking sanctions on Russia. And the Europeans said, "Hell no, we're not doing that." So both things that Russia agreed to, the United States is incapable of delivering on. But the United States insists, well, Russia's got to agree to they've got to agree to a ceasefire. They're not going to agree to a ceasefire, okay? Stop that. Stop insisting that that's something that they got to do, because they ain't going to do it. And the reason they're not going to do it is because they can point to incident after incident over the last 10 years where they have agreed to ceasefires that were always broken by the West. So they're not going to go, they're not Charlie Brown. They're not going to continue to try to kick the football while Lucy's holding it. They recognize that Lucy's a bitch and can't be trusted. They're either going to put the ball on a kicking tee or they're going to go play on another field. But they're not Charlie Brown.
Going to Palestine for a second? To me, they're they're talking about all these things, moving the Palestinians out of there, relocating them, what have you. How is that ever going to occur? You've got 1.5 million, 1.8 million, 2 million people. You can't. It's not possible. They're not going to leave.
Well, not willingly. So that's why Israel's starving them out right now. No food, no water, no medical supplies, no humanitarian supplies are being allowed in. The world stands by doing nothing. The only country in the world that's been trying to fight on behalf of the Palestinians are the Houthis. And this, when this period of history is recorded, it's going to be as shameful as the inaction of the world during the Holocaust. And I don't want to hear about, oh, the Holocaust was a fabrication. Please stop. It happened. What's so sickening about what's going on right now is that you'd think that that the Jews who survived that, their descendants whose parents survived that, would have the grace, the mercy to not do what the Nazis did, which is exactly what these Zionists are doing. They're behaving like a bunch of Nazis. So they are in the process of exterminating the Palestinian people.
I just don't understand how that could be successful. I hate to use that word, but these people, you can't break their spirit.
Just like how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. That's what they're doing. They keep killing them. They've killed over 60, the official numbers out of the Palestinian authorities are roughly 60,000.
I would have thought higher than that, Larry. I'd have thought a couple 100,000.
There are those who argue that the bodies that are underneath the rubble and such would push the number closer to 200,000-300,000. But death is now a regular feature. It's such a common phenomena in Gaza now and in the West Bank that people become immune to seeing the body of a child laying on the ground. You get accustomed to it. That's the real horror here.
What does World War III look like to you, and how would we know if, in fact, it started, or has it started?
It hasn't started, but if we go to war, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. The internet would be down. The satellite systems would be taken out immediately. Russia's got a far more robust capability to destroy satellite systems than we do, and we would be blinded. So all of our overhead intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance would be destroyed. It would render navigation on a lot of our ships and aircraft impossible. So that would be the start. Um, the there's always a prospect of the capability to launch nuclear weapons. Russia is not, in my view, wanting to do this at all, but they at least have an air defense system in place capable of shooting down U.S. ballistic missiles, whether submarine launched, air launched, or ground launched. In contrast, the United States has no capability to defend against that threat. So, if tensions really escalated to the point, the Russians could do a preemptive strike, take us out, and our ability to retaliate would be constrained. But I don't see the Russians doing that. They absolutely do not want to do that. But the United States, by virtue of its actions over the last 3 years, and not only supporting the war in Ukraine, I mean, good God, we've been actively involved with planning attacks, providing the means to carry out those attacks, providing the targeting data. Just flip the script. If Russia was doing that to us on our border with Mexico, we would consider it an act of war. And yet we think we can do that to Russia, and there's no, they just have to suck it up and accept it. No, they don't. That's why I say we're playing with fire, nuclear fire.
What does your instinct tell you in terms of Iran, and how real is the possibility that the West would, use military force? Or do you
No,
think
they're going to try. Yeah, I think it's high that they're going to do it, and they'll get their ass kicked. United States. We can't beat the Houthis, okay? Wake up, America, for God's sake. We think we got this great, marvelous, can do anything military capability. And yet here we are. First it was Operation Prosperity Guardian. And the Bush, and I don't want to hear from the Trump team, oh, we're really being tough. No, we're not a bunch of pussies like those Biden people. We're really hitting the Houthis hard. The Houthis have now shot down their third or fourth Predator in the last week and a half. Every Predator MQ-9 Reaper is $30 million. So, they've shot down $120 million worth of Predators in just the last week and a half. Prior to that, they'd shot down another 14. So, they're well up over $40 million in Predators. And yet they continue to have missiles that they can fire. We can't stop them. But we're going to go into Iran, which is, 10 times the size of Yemen. Iran, which actually has robust air defense systems. Iran, which has hypersonic missiles. And we're going to do more damage to them than we're able to do to the Houthis. Shut up. I mean, it's just this kind of delusional crap is, we just got to wake up to it.
I know we're running out of time here with you, but Where do you feel like we're at? Not we. Where do you feel like the United States is? Because I say we, even though I have no part of what this government is
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
right
No,
now.
we're all part. We're still Americans.
How do you feel the state of the United States is in right now? And then, two, what would you suggest to regular people in how best to prepare for what what may or may what might what's about to happen?
I keep at least a 3 month stockpile of food and batteries and other things that the system. If we get into a war and the supply chains are broken, we're going to have problems. That's one of it comes back to this tariff issue. This is going to disrupt the supply chain. The tariff, uh, Donald Trump's approach to tariffs is like Joe Biden's approach to bird flu. Remember what Joe Biden did with bird flu? He ordered all those chickens to be killed. What happened after they killed all the chickens? Eggs were tough to find. Price of eggs tripled, quadrupled in some cases. Only now, are they starting to get the egg production back up and running, but it's still not back where it was. That's exactly what Trump has done with these tariffs, particularly on China. He's like, killed the chicken. And it's going to disrupt the supply chain. And, the day that Biden killed the chickens, the eggs didn't disappear from the stores. That came 2-3 weeks later. And that's what's going to happen here. So, right now, I'm not sure there's much anybody can do. You're gonna hang on for the ride. It's going to be bumpy.
Where's your level of concern of where we're at right now versus, in the past with our conversations? We've been talking for a few years. Is it the highest it's ever been?
Yeah, it is. I think the next 4 to 6 weeks will have the potential to be really decisive, a watershed in world history, if Trump follows through on his threats to attack Iran. I'm hopeful that the intervention of China and Russia will help resolve the situation, but we see at the same time Trump's attacking China, and there's nothing. What's China's incentive to work with us now? We think we're basically, hey, get on your knees and kiss our ass. Chinese aren't going to do that. They're not going to humiliate themselves. As I said, this is Trump. Trump's got to stop with this tough guy bullshit. It really is. It's unbecoming. He should be better than that. He should be setting the example. Instead, he's acting like he's some, schoolyard bully. And I'm disgusted by it myself.
Any regrets on voting for him?
Yes, but it wouldn't, the vote, last thing, we wouldn't be better off with Harris and Biden or whatever that's called. We'd continue the process of destroying America from within. I'm glad Trump's done what he's done with the border. I'm glad he's moving strongly to try to counter this woke agenda across the board. But, at the same time, he's attacking the First Amendment and the right of people to protest. And he's enabling genocide, facilitating it. So, it's a mixed bag. So, yeah, I'm not real happy with what I'm seeing. And it's a mixture of sadness and regret because, Trump could have been something special. Like I said, he could have come in and really set the world on a peaceful course. And instead, I think we're going to war.
Where can people find you, Larry?
Sonar21.com.
As always, I appreciate you doing this. Look forward to continuing to follow your work, and I'm sure it won't be that long before we talk again.
Yeah, Michael, always glad to do it, buddy.
Thank you so much. Mic drop.